Proof that the Bible is woke. Psalm 82, 3 and 4. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. I gotta say, I kind of like where the Bible is coming from here. This book is used all the time and time again, to oppress marginalized people. Maybe it's time for Bible believers to get a little more woke, whatever that means. If you disagree, then give us a call, because the show is coming right now. Okay, well, welcome to Talk Heathen. Today is Sunday, September 17th, 2023. I am your host, Christy Powell, and joining me today is anti-theist Derek Mathias. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm overjoyed to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, well, this is our first time actually doing a show together. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and I guess what kind of questions we're looking to get into today.
Okay, sounds good. My name's Derek Mathias. I have a channel on YouTube called Underlings, and it's basically an anti-theism channel. I cover both atheism issues and topics in evolution and anything related. My background is as a naturalist. I have a degree in evolution, basically, that my bachelor's in evolution, and I studied in the Charles Darwin Institute in the Galapagos Islands, and I was a naturalist, worked as a naturalist teaching evolution on a cruise ship in the Galapagos for a year. And yeah, that's my background on this topic.
Man, there are so many things I know I would love to ask you about. I've been reading Franz de Waal all summer and getting very excited about evolutionary psychology, comparative psychology, what we can and can't learn from the animal kingdom. But I'm interested to hear what our callers are interested in. Like, what do you guys want to talk about? We are here to take those calls. This is Talk Heathen. We are a product of the Atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Give us a call with those calls, because we are a live call-in show with open lines. So get your calls in now while you still can at 512-991-9242. Or from your computer, you can give us a try at tiny.cc/callth. And before we get started, let's look at the answers to last week's Talk Heathen to Me, our weekly segment where we ask for viewers to chime in with their answers to questions. Last week, we asked you, what is a sin Jesus didn't intend to die for? Our number 3 answer this week came from JD Martin. JD says, Jesus didn't die to forgive call center scams, but when he returns, he will need to break in that new sword on something. I'm with you. I think that's a fair plan. Number 2 came from Chuck Gaidos, who says, Jesus was willing to die for someone's sin of picking up sticks on a Saturday, but surely he didn't mean to include picking up a fumbled football with the end zone in sight. It's that time of year. My team is getting destroyed already in college football. You know what? I think I'm just ready to move on. I'm a little bit too worked up about it. Our number 1 answer from last week came from CNalt. Says Jesus didn't intend to die for killing someone's fig tree because he was hungry and it wasn't bearing fruit out of season. It's cold. It's cold. That actually is a pretty good call out. Well, this week, Derek, we're interested to hear from all of our viewers, but I'm going to start with you. What is a lesser known fruit of the Spirit?
Of the Spirit? Well, the only spirits I know are alcohol related. So I would say durian, cherimoya, and dragon fruit. How are those for lesser known fruits?
I think that those are a number of things that could probably still be distilled, and I'd be interested to find out and see what we can find from them. What kind of spirits can we get? If you are listening to the sound of my voice, chime in the comments section of this video. Let us know what your answers are, possibly be featured in next week's episode. And without a whole lot of to-do, Derek, if you're good for it, we've got calls on the line. We've got so many interested people, I think, ready to call in, and so many questions that I'll ask you if we don't hear from our viewers. So let's just start off with the folks we have on the line.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'd like to start by checking in with Dre from Texas. We spoke a couple of weeks ago about the ethics of pornography. And Dre, I'm curious what your thoughts are, where you'd like to go with this today.
How you doing? I want to start this off by saying I did not know that you were going to be on the show today. So it's like a crazy coincidence that I have the information that you asked me for on the prior show.
Hey, I'm glad to hear it. I'll just catch up some. I don't mean to interrupt you. I definitely want to hear your take on things, but I'll catch people up a little bit. After our conversation a couple of weeks ago, after a couple of the calls from that show about pornography, I ended up writing an open letter on my website about this topic because I am somebody who is, for better or for worse, have found myself in this spot of like wanting to advocate for people's sexual expression, wanting to advocate for sex workers and these different things. And that may mean talking about pornography to the internet, but it feels like every time we do, the conversation really turns into, well, porn is bad. Well, why is porn bad? Because God says it's bad. Okay, why should I care about that? Well, it's bad because it's bad for you. Okay, well, how is porn bad for you? Because it's bad. And that type of circular answer and reasoning is such a part of this discussion that, Dre, I'm really hoping we can push past that part today. So am I fair in kind of framing it as porn is bad and here's why? Is that the conversation you're looking to have today?
Yes, but I have scholarly studies to support my position.
Cool. Yeah, I don't have time to read those on air while we have this discussion, but I'm curious at what you're looking at, and I'd be excited to see what we can share.
I will give you the study. So I got Internet Pornography and Pedophilia by Dr. Heather Wood, and the other study I have is Pornography as a Public Health Issue, Promoting Violence, Exploitation of Children, Youth, and Adults by Elizabeth Taylor.
Okay. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to have the opportunity to like really get into the veracity of these studies. Who are they by? How were they conducted? Were they properly peer reviewed? Those are all questions I'm not equipped to really answer while you and I are having a live conversation. But tell me what you've seen in these studies that makes you feel as if porn is quote unquote bad.
Can I read an excerpt for one of the studies?
Yeah, let me give you like maybe a sentence or two. This is a live talk show, so I want to keep things humming, but I am really excited that you've brought some meaningful evidence with you.
Okay, so this is an excerpt from what is it? I'm sorry. I got to. This is a very long study. This is an excerpt from Elizabeth Taylor's study. So from her conclusion. So in her conclusion, one of the main concerns was that it says perhaps the most concerning evidence that pornography is serving to expand mainstream sexual taste into the few areas still considered taboo, such as sex with children. The role of PCP presenting children as legitimate sexual partners for men has encouraged the proliferation of extensive international networks sharing massive quantities of content, driving demand for the creation of fresh content. The children abused in the process are filmed to groom others. That's just an excerpt from one of the studies, but I will send both of the studies to the email that you would give me.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm happy to look at that in a little bit more detail. I don't want to play silly word games today, but I do want to start off by really meaningfully dividing up the idea of pornography, a form of entertainment, a form of sexual expression that is made in responsible and appropriate ways, from child abuse. Child abuse is wrong. That's clearly the point here. When we talk about porn is good or porn is bad, I don't ever want to leave any lingering doubt about whether or not abusing a child on film is, quote, good in any form or fashion. But what I seem to be getting from you is that because pornography exists, that it leads to the creation of more of this childhood sexual assault material. Is that sort of the crux of what you're positing here?
That's one of the conclusions from the study. And the other study, I just have excerpts from it because that study, I don't have access to it because I'm not currently enrolled, so I don't have access to the study by Heather Woods at the moment. But I have read excerpts from her being cited in public articles.
Sure. Well, I definitely find value in that. If we were playing this game a little bit differently, I feel like I could call into your talk show and also cherry pick a bunch of research that says there's no connection, that none of this is happening. But let's try and play with the tools that you have brought to us, the toys that you're bringing along today, and see if we can't wrestle some of this out. What is the method of action that's being presented in this study? What is it that demonstrates that there is a connection between an increase in the availability of, say, internet pornography and the eventual creation of more childhood sexual assault materials?
I can't say fully what was the methods of study, so I'm just gonna go on a limb and just because I know that the Jennifer study cited Heather's study. So Heather is a clinical psychologist. I don't remember what necessarily Jennifer's credentials were, but I know that her study was heavily cited from scholarly resources. So that's why I'm saying like it would be better. I just wanted to come on here so I can present the information, and then I guess once you get a chance to review the information, maybe you get to email me back. I really don't want to have like a moralistic standpoint on this. I just wanted to present to you some research that backed up my position.
Sure. Well, I suppose I will keep an eye out for that email from you. You can certainly hit us at tv@atheist-community.org. I will be more than happy to look over what you send over. Perhaps you and I can have a little bit of an email discussion. If there is anything there of value, I'm more than happy to publish that to the Talk Heathen fan group on Facebook so that we can bring other people into that discussion. If there's, something that kind of surprises me or something that maybe challenges some of the things that I have spent years advocating for here on the ACA's channels, that's something I'm more than happy to read on air after I've taken a look at it and gotten an understanding of what it is. But softly now, just for the purposes of this conversation, which we can, maybe wrap up if that was most of what you wanted to present, I guess I just sort of want to check in on what you think is at work here. Having done a little bit of research, I'm not going to hold you to any specific numbers or whatever else, but what is sort of your understanding of the way that children are being harmed by the, I guess, widespread availability of pornography in our world? Because I do think that there's harm there that needs to be discussed, but I'm interested in your position on all of that.
I'd also like to add, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Just a brief question. Are you advocating for the removal of or the non-dissemination of pornographic material of any sort?
I don't have a concrete position on what I would do. I just have a moralistic position on how I feel about it. I have studies to back up my moralistic position, but I do not have a concrete legal
Not legal. I'm just talking moral.
Yeah, I mean, do we sort of intuit on a certain level that having widespread access to R-rated action films, watching Neo or John Wick mow down hundreds of bad guys over the course of an episode, does that lead to increased gang violence, for instance? Kind of maybe. There is some interesting data presenting possibly, but kind of also maybe not really. Is that the nature of your concern here?
That's a disingenuous comparison because pornography is not just the act of fictionalized violence. Pornography is an act of actual sex action. Most of the time, hardcore sex. That's what I'm against.
Okay. So is hardcore sex, if we take the camera out of it, if we take the internet out of it, if 2 people, 3 people, 50 people go into a room and have quote unquote hardcore sex, however we're choosing to define that notion, does that make the world a worse place?
But see, we're not talking about sex in private. We're talking about the public display that's easily accessible by children.
Okay, so the hardcore sex being on film is what makes it important.
What about writing?
What porn is?
Does that also count? Written porn?
You said what?
Written porn as well. Are you including that, not just the visual?
I don't have a position on written porn.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is that if you are advocating against pornography being displayed, disseminated worldwide, then you'd have to be against the Song of Solomon in the Bible, which is all about some serious hardcore porn. So I think that would be removing all the Bibles from all the hotel drawers and
yeah, I mean, that Bible has incest in it. It's got a ton of rape. There's lots of torture. I mean, some of it gets pretty hardcore.
Listen, we're not talking about erotica. We're talking about actual porn videos, internet porn. We're not talking about written porn.
I'm pushing back against your definitions, but I'm okay with limiting this to something very specific. Yeah, I'm not trying to move the goalpost. I'm trying to get maybe a very clear statement. I hear you. I would like for this to be your moment to give me a very clear statement. Like, what is your eventual premise? Like, what is the thing that you want the world to believe because you believe it, whether you can support it or not or anything else? Let's just start with, I believe that, and maybe we can go from there.
I believe that porn is harmful to the vast majority of the population of the world. And it's,
okay. How? Like, I don't disagree at this stage, but why is it harmful? How is it harmful? In what ways is it hurting people?
I've named one because it also, but for some reason, well, I'm not going to say for some reason, the fact that it's just hard to, what do you call it? I can't think of the word, man. I'm sorry, but you can't regulate it. It's not regulated. And since it's not regulated, child pornography gets put in the mix. Rape gets put in the mix. Actually, Pornhub is going through an issue right now because a lot of their videos happen to have actual rape, and they didn't have people to review.
I hear you. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. It's much more nuanced what you're actually discussing here. If we're being sincere about it, Facebook has a much bigger issue in terms of sheer numbers of spreading any of the types of materials that we're talking about, the childhood sexual assault and other forms of rape and abuse. There are very meaningful issues with the way that the internet has created possibilities for data to be shared very freely. And it is true that there are meaningful conversations about free speech and about moderation and about how we actually manage and stem the flow of some of these things. To say that it's not regulated is a little bit ridiculous. It's more an issue that the regulation is really awkward and that we've done a very poor job of managing what we do and do not allow to be widely distributed on the internet. But again, I'm still a little bit challenged with how we're getting from pornography exists, or very specifically videos of people having sex are on the internet, and therefore childhood sexual assault.
Well, I just make the case for stricter legislation around it. I mean, more regulation.
I would say different regulation for sure, but no question, there's nuance here. There's meaningful laws that ought to be written. We've advocated for that on this show, but in particular, when I was working with secular sexuality, you can check out the back catalog for a lot of the things there. We do need some better strategies for how to keep childhood sexual assault from happening. It's happening. There are people filming it. Those films are making their way around the world, and this is a meaningful issue. And I don't know why we can talk about that issue in the same conversation where we're talking about erotica, where we're talking about forms of expression, where we're talking about sex being filmed. That's not the same thing. People shooting each other in a video game is not the same thing as like actual street violence. We can't compare those two directly. And until we establish some sort of causal link, this conversation is not really helping inform me about anything.
I don't remember talking about video games or anything fictional. I'm talking about total non-fiction, visual, sexual acts.
Because I'm expressing to you that they're the same thing, Dre.
When they're just different versions of the same thing.
When two performers are on stage acting, they are acting. And if a actual penis actually penetrates an actual vagina, is that still acting? I mean, sure, there's maybe nuance in all of this. And again, art is a very tricky subject, but ultimately that's what porn is. It's art. The same way a TV show is art, the same way a movie is art, the same way a video game is art. Pornography is art. Art is not the same thing as violence.
I can make the case for that. I can rock with that. But my whole thing, I'm not talking about the quote unquote artful types of nudity. I'm talking about the hardcore porn is really the issue.
I mean, hardcore porn is still actors acting. That's one of the reasons I like to jump towards John Wick. I don't mean to let my crush on Keanu Reeves like overtake my professional objectivism, but the reality is there are people who are in those films who are doing these incredibly athletic things. They're jumping over live explosions. They're holding real guns. Like, there's incredible work happening. People are getting punched, and sometimes those punches land, and sometimes people get hurt. It's the same thing when you're on the set of a porno shoot and two actual people are having actual sex. We did an episode of Secular Sexuality at one. It was awesome. And it was acting.
But this is the thing.
It's performance.
This is the thing that you're not accounting for. If John Wick shoots somebody in the movie, nobody's getting shot. However, if a porn actress or actor actually has an STD and they participate in the act of sex, and they
account for that.
The STD, that's not fictional.
We account for that, but to follow that logic, if two people kiss in a PG family film and one of them has a herpes outbreak or the common cold or the coronavirus, we're also transmitting that. So to just leap towards the scary monster of sexually transmitted infections really feels like a cop-out, friend.
Yeah, anything, even not even kissing. If they've got COVID or if they even have a cold, they can spread it around through the entire shooting arena. So yeah,
I wasn't using STDs to make my case. I was just using STDs to show the actual sex act happening. And this is not a fictional sex act. This is an actual real sex act that happens in porn. Like,
are wrestlers actually wrestling? I mean, I get it. I kind of do, but I don't have a problem with sex, and so I don't really have a problem with people having sex on or off camera. And none of this gets me to rape. None of this gets me to assault. None of this gets me to assault of children, which seems to be the problem that we're looking to solve. So how is the solution of removing all internet porn from the internet solving the problem of childhood sexual assault?
Let's keep in mind a lot of clergy are guilty of abusing children sexually, and there's in theory they're not looking at pornography when they do that. Or it may not be the motivating factor for that. It exists regardless of pornography.
All right. Well, Dre, I'm going to maybe give you the last word here. If you're still on the line, I will keep an eye out for your email. And anybody who is interested in this conversation, the way that I know I am, keep an eye on the Talk Heathen Facebook group, and we will kind of keep that live if we can. Okay. Well, I believe that may be all from Dre for today. Sorry, guys. I don't mean to always be that guy talking about porn, but like, if you want to, give us a call. We've still got more lines open. There's plenty of fascinating conversation to be had around evolution, around moral philosophy. There is so much for us to discuss, and we hope that you will join us in that discussion. But for now, let's maybe touch in with Felix in Florida, yeah? All right, Felix, you have some concerns about the destruction of the nuclear family, yeah?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about it. What are your concerns? What do you see and what's happening?
I see that secularism normalizes divorce. And it's saying, oh, okay, people get a divorce and children live in two separate households, it's fine. It just didn't work out with the parents. But that's not something that should be normalized. We can't glorify single motherhood.
Okay, let's start there. Okay,
Yeah.
I heard we shouldn't normalize it. It's not a good thing. Why?
Children
I also would like to jump in on this at some point.
Mm.
But yeah, go ahead and answer his question first, if you would, please.
Yeah, children going through a divorce and then having to live in two separate households, they spend less time with both of their biological parents. Or if a child is just with their mom and not with their father, they're spending less time with their father. And divorce does this to children, so it's not good for their development to spend less time with the parents. And the split itself is traumatic.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think what you're getting at is that children are experiencing distress because of a lack of connection to their parents. By that same token, jobs that make you work more than 40 hours a week are bad. Hobbies like golf are bad. I mean, I don't really think that you can say that divorce leads to bad outcomes for children because we don't really see that in the research. There are some
Also-
interesting correlations and things, but plenty of other factors that need to be brought into this. Derek, please, let me let you take over here.
Yeah, I also wanted to point out that the children who are living in a family environment that's hostile, violent, angry, that's not healthy either. So sometimes the lesser of two evils is to split up. It's as simple as that.
I agree. If there's abuse in the home, divorce is the lesser of two evils. But that doesn't mean that divorce is a good thing or that it should be normalized. We should prevent abuse, not say, "Oh, it's
But
okay."
you also mentioned that it's a secular thing. I think you mentioned that at the beginning, right? But if you look at the divorce statistics, as I understand it, the ones with the lowest divorce rates are atheists, Lutherans, and Catholics. Those with at around something like 21%, something like that. Whereas evangelicals and other Christian faith denominations have higher, like around 45%. So this doesn't sound like a secular issue. This sounds like a people issue.
Secularist doctrines say, "Oh, it's okay to get a divorce." Most Christians say, "No, divorce is not of God."
I'm not aware of
most
a
secular
quote unquote
people-
secular doctrine that I've ever read that says divorce is good. I can actually point to a number of different religious contexts that would express the idea that divorce is at least allowable or acceptable or sometimes necessary. Last week, Jim on this show detailed some data around the reality around who is and is not getting divorced. I don't really know how to help you here, Felix. I also want the best thing for children. I want the best thing for families. I want the best thing for everybody. And in a lot of cases, the best thing is for two parents to no longer be in a relationship with one another. That is absolutely true in a non-0% of cases. And I think that we have to look at this in terms of, well, yeah, sure, fine. No one should ever get a divorce unless they want one, in which case they should probably get one. I mean, isn't that eventually where we come down to on this, when we're saying, well, no one should get a divorce except in this situation, this situation, this situation. Let's not normalize it, but let's allow people to get it when they should or when they're supposed to. But like, let's not make it normal. Let's only let people do it under very specific circumstances. And then we as outsiders who don't know anything about what's going on in their relationships, whether they're abusive or whatever else, we should shame them for it rather than normalize divorce.
Yeah.
How is what you're presenting different from what I'm saying here?
Also, it might be worth noting that people who went off track here in my mind. Go ahead, continue. Go ahead and answer his question. Let me reconsider that.
Yeah, Felix, can you walk us through the issue that we're solving? Yeah,
I didn't say anything about shaming people for getting a divorce. I didn't say anything about making it illegal. That would take a huge authoritarian type of state.
What's the difference? What's the opposite of normalizing? If we shouldn't normalize, then we should fill in that blank for me.
We should work with social workers and churches to, when people want to get married, to say, okay, is this a healthy relationship? We should try to bring counseling to people who want to get married and have children. We should try to just minimize terrible situations that we put children in.
That's actually what I wanted to jump on there, that I went off on a slight tangent about, if I may continue with that. One of the things that so many religions do, especially Christianity, is to frown upon marriage, sex before marriage. And as a result, you find a lot of people getting married young because they aren't used to they haven't had sex. They're desperate for it, but they're not allowed to have it. And thus marriage is the only option that they're supposedly morally able to do. So if you give them let's say, the freedom to have sex in a safe sex environment, then people are more likely to make better decisions when it comes to marriage, not marrying out of horniness, but marrying because they really care about someone and want to live the rest of their lives with them. So that would be one thing that would be helpful. And religions don't go along those lines, unfortunately. What do you think, Christy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's all fair to say. I am one of those marriage therapists that you are advocating for, Felix, and I want to help people with their relationship. I want to help people who aren't married yet decide whether or not they would like to get married. I'd like to help people who are married figure out how to have the healthiest, happiest relationship that they can. I work with people who are considering going through divorce, and I don't ever tell them, no, don't do it. And I also don't tell them, yeah, you should definitely do it. But I help them come to the conclusion that is best for them, which is exactly what you are advocating for. It sounds like you're saying, on one hand, like it would take a really authoritarian government to force people into being able to end their marriage, or maybe they shouldn't get into a marriage unless things are perfect. But I just don't see that that's what's happening in these counseling offices. I don't think that that's what social workers are doing in these situations. They're helping people use the tools that they have to make the best possible decisions for themselves. That's the system that we exist in. That's the system I want to exist in, where people are doing what is right for them. And ideally, they have good support from their community, from their culture, to help them make these decisions comfortably.
That's what I was talking about, giving support to people while they get married, trying to minimize divorce as much as possible, because we're saying it's not a good thing, it's not the ideal thing, and it's just willy-nilly get a divorce whenever you want. Promoting that type of culture isn't healthy for society, not for children. Would you guys agree that it is harmful most children do not want their parents to get a divorce, that they prefer that their parents stay in a healthy, loving, committed relationship?
You know, I don't know that I could answer that, and I don't know what that answer would even mean if I could, but I would be pretty uncomfortable with actually making that assertion, even if we could make it, that the children want their parents to stay together. You know, just speaking exclusively from my own personal experience, I was so fucking relieved when my parents split up. It was very much the right thing to do. It has dramatically improved my relationship with my mother, and it has made her life 1,000% better.
I would
So,
second that as well. For my
yeah,
own
like,
situation,
we're a
it
couple
happened
of
later in
anecdotes,
life, but for
but
my
there's
parents,
plenty of
but
data.
same thing.
Yeah. So, Felix, I'm all for people making the best possible decisions for themselves, and I am all for giving them tons and tons and tons of resources to do so. Do we agree on all of that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I think we agree
fair
with
enough.
the means, just not the outcome.
Felix, I would
also believe
encourage
no more
you
divorce
to
rates.
really focus on your own relationships and how you can make them as positive as possible, to focus on the relationships of people you love. See if you can't offer some kindness, some support, some resources to the people you care about, perhaps the people whose marriages are a little bit shaky right now. But I would definitely encourage you to let go of this belief that staying together is the only or the best thing for everyone to do, because that belief is not serving you and it is not serving the people in your life. It's clearly not something we can support with any meaningful scientific data. And so I would challenge you to let people make the best possible decisions for themselves.
Yeah, let people live their lives. That's fine. I'm not going to force people how to live.
Cool. Well, all right. I don't know if you've got anything else here that you want to really jump in with, or if there's more to be said on this topic, but I'm glad that we can at least agree that people in marriages are the ones most qualified to decide whether or not to stay in those marriages.
I guess I have one more question, if we have time.
Sure. Yeah, what's that?
In many of these situations, their decision whether to stay together or not almost excludes the children's well-being. It's just the relationship. Shouldn't their mentality be that, okay, the kids should be a factor?
Yes, children should be a factor
course.
in whether or not parents decide to end a marriage. I agree with you. And as somebody who I'm just making the assumption here, Felix, but I'm going to suggest that it's highly likely that I have had intimate conversations with a great number of people about whether or not they should stay in their marriage. Certainly, I imagine more than you have. And I never once have had one of those conversations with anybody that didn't involve concern and consideration for the children involved. If you're saying as a society we're too careless and flippant with divorce, okay, all right, I don't really know what to do with that information, but maybe it is worth kind of being careful in the way we discuss divorce and the way we represent it in film and all of these different kinds of things. But I don't think that there is this massive problem that you're presenting of people getting divorced without, quote unquote, thinking of the children. Every single time I have ever sat across from somebody who is making the difficult decision whether or not to stay in a marriage, their child has been, if not the only thing on their mind, certainly one of the most important things. To suggest otherwise, I think, is to really misunderstand these people that you are suggesting that you want to help.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you get the idea that they just disregard the children. That seems like I mean, even in popular TV, you see that all the time with the kids being involved in the decision-making process. So that seems a little odd.
You got anything else for us, Felix, or is that sort of where we'd like to leave it?
Yeah, that was the topic of the conversation. Thank you so much, Aaron.
All right. Well, fair enough. Thank you so much for
Thank
calling.
you.
I'm glad we could see our way through all of this. You have a great day. All right. Well, it seems like we are actually in the rare situation, Derek, of maybe possibly making a little bit of headway, particularly with some repeat callers. I don't know. Maybe Dre just hung up because we weren't making headway, but the discussion's a little bit more interesting, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by it. It's interesting to me how they'll often come in with a certain negative viewpoint on a particular topic, and it turns out that there's a lot more in common than they actually seem to think.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. And when we start picking through all of the exception finding and all of the if then types of statements, we eventually get down to, oh, well, this bad thing happened to me and it was upsetting to me. And I don't necessarily experience the nuance in other people's situation that I experienced in my own. So, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, or maybe just trust that these other people also have a rich and complicated internal life and that they are doing their best to make a complicated decision as well as they possibly can. I don't know. That's sort of the Rogerian counselor in me in all of this, but it's important to me that we all take it for granted that everybody around us is just kind of doing their best. And sometimes their best is total bullshit, and we can call that out. But that doesn't mean that we know better necessarily.
amen.
Well, we still have some lines open. We've got some callers we're going to speak to in a moment, but I want to make sure to highlight this brand new way to support the atheist community of Austin. We are offering engraved bricks that will become a part of our library and part of our long-term legacy. Let's take a look at this video walking us through it all.
Have you ever wanted to make a permanent impact on the atheist community of Austin? Help support our space for free thought by buying a custom engraved brick to be laid on the building grounds to help raise funds for improvements. Our building has stood as a beacon for years, bringing people together. But 3 years of emptiness due to the pandemic have taken a toll, leaving it in disrepair. Help us restore this hub of connection and support by buying a brick. Moses had his stone tablets, but we're doing our own version. Join our brick fundraiser and let your engraved messages stand the test of time, minus commandments. Visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks for more information.
Beautiful. Well, that's definitely an opportunity to check out. I haven't gotten to see the live bricks in person just yet. I'm really excited to see what it looks like once we begin to etch and install and everything else. I think this is a great way to support our community. And let's leave it there while we touch base again with our repeat caller, Otari, from the nation of Georgia. Otari, I understand that you would like to talk again about pornography, and I'm just going to give you the same little caveat I've been giving on this subject. I don't want to hear porn is bad. I would like to hear porn causes distress because, and then we can maybe discuss it. Is that a fair way to frame all this?
Hello. Distress, you mean, I want to talk about sexual assault specifically.
Yeah, you're interested in talking about the harm caused by adult films, yeah?
Yeah. But,
Okay, tell me about it. What's the distress? What's the harm that you are seeing out in the world?
Yeah, but if I may, before I get into my topic, may I ask something related to prior call?
I'd like to keep it kind of on a one track here if we can. What was on your mind when you decided to pick up the phone today?
All right, well, so here's the study by American Psychological Association. It's a meta study, so it's a compilation of studies, as far as I know. Meta studies are a compilation of studies, and it concluded that little doubt that on the average, individuals who consume pornography more frequently are more likely to hold attitudes conducive to aggression and engage in acts of sexual aggression.
Sure. I'm struggling a little bit with some of the connection and some of the words that you said, but I believe you're referring to a study that I've actually read. And there is some research to indicate that people who use a lot of pornography, particularly violent or aggressive pornography, are also people who are likely to hold violent or aggressive views that we might consider misogynistic or aggressive towards women. There's a lot of complication and nuance in that correlation, but is that sort of what you're getting at here and what you were talking about?
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
Oh boy.
Well, I was really just meaning to sort of summarize what I understood you suggest. And what I am looking to point out is that there does seem to be some amount of research, and there's a lot of issue, I would say, perhaps, with a lot of this research that suggests that people who are likely to use a lot of pornography are also likely to have violent viewpoints or be more willing to endorse a violent perspective when it comes to women, when it comes to sexuality. And there is a lot of nuance to get into all of that. I think the most important word here in all of this is the word correlation. I'm going to see if I can't pull something specific up here in just a moment, but I wanted to hear from you, Otari, whether or not that is sort of your concern and the position that you're taking here.
I mean, this is a study and specifically a meta study, and this compiled study definitely correlates the actual results of adult films. And if your issue is that most people don't see this aggression in adult films, here's another study which estimates that nearly 40% of adult films contain such aggressions.
Okay, so again, what we're ultimately saying is that there's a correlation between watching sexually aggressive pornography and holding the view that women are perhaps deserving of sexual aggression. What we often refer to as the confluence model of sexual aggression.
Not that they hold the view, but they actually act on it.
That is not research that I'm aware of ever having existed ever. In fact, this is something that I looked into to a fair amount of length within the last couple of weeks and have some like kind of ready to go studies and things that I may be able to share with you if you would like to reach out over email. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how best to help you or what I might be able to explain or describe to you now, other than to say, if there is any amount of data showing that watching violent pornography then later leads people to be more likely to commit acts of violence, I've actually seen a lot of data saying the exact opposite is likely true. So if you want to maybe, again, send us an email and let me take a look at what you're looking at, maybe help you understand what it is that you're reading or share some of it with our audience with a little bit more nuance, I'm happy to help any way that I can.
All right, well, I'll share my studies with you.
Okay, well, we'll take a look and appreciate you sharing that information. Thanks for giving us a call. Derek, how does that notion land with you at all? Just this sort of correlative idea that because pornography exists, that children are more likely to be assaulted, that women are more likely to be assaulted. Does that pass the smell test for you on any level? Is there any smoke to that fire?
I've been a writer for many years, and having read a gazillion basically novels in fantasy, science fiction that's contained sexuality and all of that, you'll see people acting things out. So, you know, like, I don't know, if a kid reads a book on valiant knight slaying a dragon, they may act it out as a kid.
I was briefly banned from watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles after being caught karate chopping my refrigerator. So, you know, there is a monkey see, monkey do component to humanity.
Right.
Again, does that mean that, playing Halo or watching John Wick leads to violence? Does it mean that watching violent pornography, whatever that actually means, leads to assault? More tenuous, right?
Yeah, very tenuous, especially, there's a difference between adults and children when it comes to sex and violence, of course. And I think you're going to find that yes, you're going to even see adults acting out things that they might see in pornography and the like. Hell, LARPers, live action role players,
Mm-hmm.
they're acting out fantasy adventure. You'll also see the same thing with those, what's the term for it? The martial arts with using armor and weapons.
Fencing and things along those lines.
No, I was thinking more along the lines of the actual enacting combats, but yeah, it starts with an H, I think. Sorry, it's eluding me at the moment, but yeah, so people will act out things. And when it comes to sex, sure, if someone sees some interesting act in a porno, they may act it out in their regular lives. But to go to the extent where you're saying, well, you can't watch this because that might influence you in some way, you'd have to eliminate all fiction, all movies, all
right?
books. There would be no, you'd be, to coin a phrase, you'd be destroying the soul of humanity by getting rid of all those arts. Yeah, okay, there can be some negative aspects that perhaps come out of it, but you'd have to really establish that well scientifically in order to justify removing that from the public sphere.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware that the last thing that the internet needs is another middle-aged white guy defining art. But I very much think of pornography as a form of art and art as a form of play. It's something that mammals do. We are afraid of snakes. And so, a young kitten needs to learn eventually to not only be afraid of snakes, but possibly to be able to kill one. So the mother cat finds a snake, wounds it, brings it to the kittens, and they play around with it as a way of working through the fact that snakes are scary, as a way of working through the skills that they need to eventually be able to utilize, as a way of forming bonds between one another. Like play and sexuality, pornography, art, all of these things are just ways for us to sort of work out the fact that we're afraid of dying. And so we kind of like to see John Wick live on the edge. We're afraid of finding relationships. And so we want to watch romantic comedies and see people love each other and connect. We want to maybe have the emotion of what it was like going on our first date now that we're on our 50th year of marriage. Like, that's
even
what
horror,
this is all here to do.
Even
even
horror is appealing because it makes you feel certain emotions. We are emotional beings. It's nice to have those emotions titillated in various ways. So even horror, even fear is an excitement. It makes one feel alive. Yeah, you don't want to eliminate that.
Absolutely. Well, all right. Let me take a quick break here to mention our new limited edition t-shirt, one that reads this month in the Talk Heathen store: Jesus can't answer prayers because the Wi-Fi in heaven sucks. Love that. You can find that at tiny.cc/merchaca to get one now. And of course, I want to take a moment to remind people about our next upcoming live show. If you happen to be in the Austin area on September 24th, 2023, consider joining us for a live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen this month is going to be hosted by Objectively Dan and Sophia Spina, as well as AXP, hosted by Dan and Jamie the Blind Limey. Doors are open at noon. Really hope to see you there. I know you hear us talk about it each week, but it is absolutely a really great time. And I think it brings so much new energy to these shows that we've been doing for years now and gives us all a chance to form community around them. It's definitely a great time. And with that, let's talk to Dave in India, who mercifully, I think, has something for us other than sex is bad, okay?
Hey.
Dave, what did you want to talk to us about today?
Hello, hey. So based on my understanding, I see that atheism is the denial of a metaphysical substrate. Would you say that's the correct understanding?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'd need to define all of those terms to get there, but why don't you walk us through what you mean?
So, I mean like an inverted pyramid, like an inverted triangle. And the more you go down, everything gets smaller and smaller, and it gets much difficult to measure each of those things. So if you go beyond a certain point, there exists a layer which I understand as metaphysical substrate, which is like before the Big Bang. So, and I would understand that that is something which cannot be explained by science, but that might be God itself, like that might be the God. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Derek, I think you may have more experience with both metaphysics and substrate than I actually do. Are you making head or tails of this?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, I think you're working under the assumption that atheism is the denial of gods rather than just the lack of belief in gods. There's a huge difference there. One is a belief and the other is a lack of belief. And I would think you'll find that most atheists are in the category of lacking belief, although there are some that actually actively don't. And some are more nuanced in the sense that this God has testable predictions that end up being wrong. So I actively disbelieve in that God. But this one does not. It's too nebulous. So we just don't have an opinion on it, or we just have no belief in that. That's one. Second is the beginning of the universe doesn't have anything to do with atheism. Atheism is the lack of belief in gods, whereas what you're talking about is physics. What happened before the Big Bang, if before actually makes any sense? For all we know, one of the simplest explanations that we have that's natural is that we have the quantum realm that exists. We know the quantum realm exists. We've got very good evidence for it in our universe. And what if it extends beyond our universe? And our universe was just a fluctuation that resulted in our local universe and could result in many more universes. If that's the case, then what we have is a completely natural explanation that has no need for anything metaphysical. Yes, it's true. We don't know where this quantum realm would have come from in the first place, but you've got the same problem if you're a theist. Where did God come from? What caused him to exist in the first place? You can't really answer a mystery by evoking an even greater mystery. It's easier, smarter, more logical to say, I don't know. Simple as that. What do you think, Christy?
Yeah, I'm curious how comfortable Dave is with sitting in that space, because it does seem like you have the simpler model, and none of this really gets us to therefore God. Dave, what do you say?
Yeah.
Yes. So like quantum, what I understand is that quantum is just a measure, but it's just that it's so small that we name it quantum, but there isn't really anything in nature that we can point to and say that this is quantum or that is quantum. It's just that the particle is so small that we have defined it as quantum. But what if we go
no, not exactly. And particles pop in and out of existence at the quantum level, these virtual particles. If particles can pop in and out of existence out of evidently nothing, then why not universes?
Yeah, so like ether, right? So ether which is counter space, would be that particular place from which the particles pop out of and then also pop back in too. So
Oh, you mean the
universe,
ether?
there are like plenty. Yeah, ether. Yeah.
Are you that concept was disproved a long time ago, 100 years ago, I think. I'm not a physicist, so I can't say for certain, but that was the idea of where the medium that light traveled through, I believe.
Right.
That
So
doesn't really have to do
the
with
thing
the
is like
quantum
the
world.
base. Yeah. So like the base. I would say the base substance in which everything exists is ether, because even Tesla quoted in one of his lectures, I think, that light is nothing but a sound wave in the ether. So ether.
Yeah, you're bringing
I,
up
like, I read.
you're bringing up something from way, way, way in the past that was a misunderstanding of how physics worked at the time. It's like bringing up leeches. Well, no, leeches actually are useful. Bringing up the idea of humors in the blood causing people to be hot-headed or sick or the like. That's discredited in modern medicine. And the ether, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone else who's more versed in physics than I am, that was one of those long discredited explanations in physics.
Dave, ultimately, let
honest,
me check in with where you're coming at this from. Like, what is your expertise in physics, and what is it that you have discovered, and what you understand about what you've discovered that makes you feel like you have found something that isn't really being noticed or discussed by the people who are in that field, by the people who obsess over these things?
Yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm just a normal Joe Schmo, to be honest. But like, I watch a lot of different stuff. But here's two things that I'll point out. The first thing is that Tesla figured out wireless electric transmission. And that is only possible if there is a medium like ether, which is there for it to happen. And the second thing was, I used to, like 2-3 years back, I used to meditate a lot. And during one of those meditations, I was able to experience ether in my neck while meditating. It was basically a state where I could see a small energy, a small empty ball in our neck. So basically what I'm saying is that the base substance, no matter which realm it is, whether it's a different universe or this universe, would be ether. And on top of that, we have different particles. So that's like an inverted triangle upside down. Yeah.
Well, sure, Dave. I mean, I appreciate that you are a average Joe punching above your weight class by studying these really complex notions of physics. And I have to point out that if you are coming to conclusions that are not well supported by the actual titans of that field of intellectual study, that there's likely something that you've missed.
And I'd like to add in here, yes, I did a quick look up here. Yeah, 1905, Albert Einstein made it the concept of the ether irrelevant with his formulation of special relativity. So, yeah, that's not a thing in physics anymore. Tesla was back then, not now.
Sorry. Yeah. But that's the thing, right? That if you go to black hole, then all of the current physics fails, right? Like even Einstein's physics and all of them fail if you go to black hole. So yeah, they are right. But what I have seen is that when you speak with an atomist or like a materialist, they always deny ether and they don't acknowledge its existence. And they try to replace it with some other substance. But
there's no evidence that it exists. That's the problem.
So yeah, that is the thing, that it's counter space. So I don't think we can conceptually imagine a picture of it, because all we can imagine is like space everywhere, but we can't really imagine counter space. But ether is counter space. So yeah, I believe that ether is there, but yeah, maybe I need to do more research on that.
I would advise that because it's there's just
Yeah.
no evidence for the ether. It was a proposed explanation, no longer needed with the development of special relativity by none other than Albert Einstein himself. So, yeah, I would look into that.
Yeah,
I would
and
suggest.
really, as you are sort of being curious, right, and doing this not for work, not for research science, but for your own curiosity, I can understand why you would want to go down some, Tesla rabbit holes and start looking at some of this more like esoteric and outdated science. It makes for a good story oftentimes, and there's certainly value in looking at Euclid's geometry and looking at, like some of these like older forms of science and seeing what holds up and what doesn't. But if you are drawing your conclusions about the nature of the universe, about, whether or not there is a God creator and some of these like really big picture important questions, you should probably be looking at the latest and greatest. You should probably be looking at what the people who really understand these subjects are saying, and be, I don't mean to be at all rude about it, but very humble about the conclusions that you're drawing. Is that a fair framework for me to offer you, Dave?
Yeah. No, that's perfectly. Yeah, I'm just an average guy. I don't claim to be an expert in anything, but yeah, I am curious, as you pointed out, and that's why I like look at all this stuff. But yeah, maybe I should do more research and look into that more. But
Yeah, keep
Just
reading,
not-
keep
I like that you're
learning, keep
willing.
having fun. You're doing good work, but
Exactly.
consider your sources.
right. That's perfect. Awesome. Yeah.
All right.
I
Yeah,
think that was it from my side. Yeah.
Sure. Love to ask you to give us a call back after you have a little bit more under your belt. I know we definitely have some folks here that would be very interested in talking you through some of the physics of this a little bit differently and maybe with a little more nuance in what we're able to offer. But for now, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
So much. I appreciate that. Okay. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
You have a good one.
Well, take a quick moment to read a super chat that came in earlier today from Ben9, who offered $4.99, stating, the Vatican's been abusing children long before porn was on the internet. Apples and oranges. Definitely a fair point. I'm not somebody who wants to just throw his hands up in the air and say, well, humans are just awful and always have been and always will be. But when we talk about sex, we get so uncomfortable that something like pornography is something that we want to just blame all of society's ills on. Or if we had a bad experience with divorce or something along those lines, we like to say, well, then nobody should ever have a divorce because this is what's wrong with the world today. And, life is just a little more complex than all of that.
Always shades of gray.
Yeah. Certainly. Well, we've had some fun conversations today. Definitely, there is a lot that we are going to work to keep going. You can find more on some of these topics, maybe share some of the research that I'm skeptical exists, but that has maybe been brought forward today. In a lot of that is going to be, including my open letter, in the Talk Heathen community fan page on our Facebook fan page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. And you can also follow us, the Atheist Community of Austin, on TikTok. Talk Heathen specifically has a TikTok at Talk Heathen. You can join us there for the pre-show that we do every week. Richard Gilliver has been doing those and bringing in a lot of very interesting conversations. So we'd love to keep these discussions going. After we wrap up our show here today, Derek and I, as well as Richard, are going to be in the Atheist community of Discord for a live after show. So if you are watching this live on September 17th, we hope that you'll join us there. Otherwise, Derek, we've been kind of bouncing back and forth between a variety of different things.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and having a little bit more nuance than maybe the last time I was on the show, which is such a relief to not just have to keep hearing porn bad. But for the things that we've maybe touched on, what do you feel is maybe important to revisit and get a second pair of eyeballs on, or maybe just a little bit more attention to?
Good question. Well, the one that keeps popping into mind for me is that every time somebody wants to bring up something bad about pornography, violence, that when they're trying to get rid of it on a biblical basis, they don't have a leg to stand on because the Bible's full of that shit. So
Sure. Yeah.
that one always needs to be in the back pocket to bring out when somebody makes one of those assumptions.
Really, all of these conversations can kind of fit into that box of like, okay, so there is a problem. What does God actually have to do with that problem? Like we've pointed out, being a evangelical Christian does not protect your marriage from divorce more so
Not
than
at
being
all.
an atheist does.
Yeah,
And
that must drive them nuts because, quite frankly, that goes so against the whole idea that biblical marriage is the right way to do it, and that's the happiest way you're going to
put your
live.
focus on the family. Yeah, it definitely creates a great number of issues for us all to be working under these assumptions that the biblical way of doing things is the best way of doing things. That idea may have made a little bit more sense when you were in a small village and trying to compare your understanding of your village to the village across the river and what that actually looked like. But here in modern world, we actually have the data. We have the capacity to see what happens when pornography is viewed as evil in a society or is made illegal in a society, and then that changes. Does it immediately lead to some huge uptick in divorce, in violence, in assault of children? No, it's complicated. There's nuance in all of that data, but there's certainly a lot to look at. Well, before we begin to wrap up today, I want to make sure to mention all 5 of our top 5 patrons. We've got a little bit of a shakeup this week as Left in the Leaves coming in at number 5. Number 4 is Helvetti. Number 3, Devor Valjean. Number 2, Oops, All Singularity. And again, holding on to that top spot is Dingleberry Jackson, with our honorable mention this week being Neil the 604 Atheist, our good friend and buddy. Otherwise, I suppose I appreciate everybody for giving us a call this week, for working to help us advance the conversation a little bit beyond the whole sex is bad. I want to say on a personal note that these conversations can be so restricted to that idea that it can seem as if we are in 2 separate camps of porn good, porn bad. And all of the nuance about how sex workers are being treated gets lost. All of the nuance around becoming hyperfixated on an outlet or a form of expression that can damage your marriage or damage your relationships gets lost. There are very real conversations to be had about the way we moderate the internet, about the way we allow information to spread freely, and about the labor practices that we operate under. There's a hell of a lot to be said here, and I just appreciate being part of a community of free thinkers who are trying to have those conversations. So I really am grateful to all of you for calling in and for joining us. I want to say thank you to Derek for being here, as we have lost his connection briefly. And I suppose I will just take this as an opportunity to give out some love rings and to thank all of y'all for being a part of these conversations. We so appreciate you being here with us, and look forward to seeing you next week.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.